I had high hopes for Talamasca, the Secret Order Episode 6 to stick the landing, especially after Episode 5 felt like it was rushing to the finale. It felt like the show was about to make its mark in the immortal universe from the finale's very first scene. A flashback to the 1980s reveals a vampire in Amsterdam being forced to make someone else into a vampire, though it's unclear who at first. This cliffhanger is juxtaposed with Doris leaving the apartment her and Guy are hiding out in. When he follows her to a convenience store, the pair see a news report about her coven being slaughtered, driving them to go back to the boat. Of course, it's not a wise decision when half the characters in Talamasca can't be trusted anymore, but the emotional event does make their abandonment of safety sensible. However, what follows makes the episode feel less like a season finale that ties things together, and more like setup for a much larger season 2. While I'm excited to see where the show will go from here, I also felt as though the final episode was weakened because of its focus on setting up the future. Talamasca's season finale offers a compelling twist to its 752 story. Upon their arrival at the docks, Guy and Doris are immediately apprehended by Ridge, whose keen investigative skills make her curious about their involvement in Kev's and Arch's deaths. She's particularly keen on tying Guy to Helen, as Helen's DNA was, inexplicably, found at the crime scene. It's a tense sequence interspersed with Helen learning the truth about her sister, the two stories crescendoing to a riveting climax. Through the back and forth of both events unfolding, we learn that Doris is Helen's sister. After a very odd and out-of-place assassination that I still don't fully understand, an action sequence reveals both Olive as a traitor and Doris as a vampire. It's a clever twist that starts to make her connection to Guy all the more comprehensible, while also indicating the Talamasca themselves are now compromised. The best twist happens when Guy takes Doris to safety. Because of her ability to memorize information to a supernatural degree, she read through everything in the Talamasca's Amsterdam library. The fire, it seems, was set on purpose to protect the information from getting into the wrong hands. Because Doris is the 752. Partially flimsy, I was invested by this twist. Even if it was somewhat far-fetched for the Talamasca to compromise themselves so blatantly by putting all of their information into someone who'd burn up in the daytime. Still, I was happy to see Doris have a greater purpose as both Helen's sister and the 752. It made a moment near the end, as Guy and Doris attempt to escape, all the more powerful. As the season finale draws to a close, Helen arrives at the train station to give Guy and Doris their passports, as promised in Talamasca, the Secret Order Episode 5. However, she ends up having to turn herself into the police to avoid being captured by agents working for Olive and Jasper. It's a sad scene as she and Doris look at each other, but it also hints that their story together is far from over. Talamasca Season 1 ends with more questions than answers. However, despite the answers Talamasca, the Secret Order's story provides in the season finale, it also leaves many events and ideas open for a possible Season 2. To some extent, this works, such as Guy going on the run with Doris while searching for his mother. This lays the groundwork for Season 2's focus, which felt necessary now that the 752 mystery had been, mostly, resolved. But other elements feel more disconnected and broader. Helen appears to be trying to recruit Ridge to the Talamasca, despite the lack of trust she should be placing in them after Olive's betrayal. There's also Jasper, who's been captured by the Talamasca, who wants him to turn over a dozen people in vampires. It's unclear why this is, but it proves corruption in the organization runs deeper than previously thought. While these developments offer intrigue for Season 2, the 752 still being in play because of Doris makes the story of Season 1 feel like it's somewhat dangling by the end. Since the series is supposed to be ongoing, this does make sense. But the episode's presentation felt more like a series of mid-season twists than it did a full-blown season finale. Even so, I enjoyed Talamasca, the Secret Order's final episode for what it was. There were plenty of interesting story developments that have left me wanting more, and I'm intrigued to know how the show is going to play out in a possible Season 2. The series was a bold expansion of the immortal universe, and this episode left me wanting more, mostly in a good way.